let me check real quick if everything's fine. Sorry about the ads. I guess I should have had like an ad blocker, but don't mind the ads on the tier maker. Oh, there you go. Oh, there you go. All right. I'm also gonna put up. This is actually a sick mix.
Students with
Uncharted
ADHD
Galaxy.
save 10 hours studying with this Chrome extension. But no.
All right. Not sure if you guys can hear that. All right, BRB. Just gonna test some things out. All right, here you go. So we're gonna do something a little different today. Those of you who are watching, you know, if you have any advice or anything about this, so yeah, okay. Today we're gonna be doing a tier list of Mass Effect 2 Insanity Squad. Then a little later today we can do John Wick, more John Wick profiles of that, and yeah. All right, so let's pull up my list, get everything squared away. Slightly lighter orange. Unless that's what we're gonna name this. Oops. I'll switch that bit here. Okay. Yes, we will need an A-, believe it or not. Then we're gonna just for my OCD. We're going to include Adware below. This is just going to be not included. So it's just other things like Chakwas, Joker, Kelly, all of them. All right. So now that we got our 12 characters here, it's time to get started. So, overall, let me see if there's anyone watching right now. It doesn't look like anyone's watching at the moment. All right. Here, I'll check every now and then to see if any of you guys have comments or questions about this list. You can always also watch this after. I might put in the description where to skip to for where the list gets started. So don't mind this rough beginning. I'm still a noob when it comes to streaming. Anyway, to lower this sound a little bit. I'm not sure if you guys are able to hear me quite well. Oops. And that's what happens when you click an ad. All right. Make sure you don't click your ads. Don't know what things they'll lead you to. All right, anyway. So, yeah, don't mind this ghetto setup. If I get more into streaming, I promise you guys I can probably change up all this. I'm usually just used to using the PlayStation feature and streaming it that way. But anyway, we'll get started with the tier list. So, one thing I have to talk about is, sorry, my bad. Starting off the list, we're going to start from top to bottom. Let's start off with Miranda. It's pretty obvious. Everyone in the community probably thinks she's the most useful in terms of squad mates. If you look up any Insanity guide or anything, they usually recommend having Miranda. She is the Liara to Sony of this game, because back in Mass Effect 1, Liara is the most useful. And so why is Miranda the most useful, and why not other DLC characters that are typically pay to win? Well, for one thing, Miranda has two things that cover DPS, or that cover, protected enemies. It's just warp and overload. It covers all protected enemies. It's pretty useful. Overload, and here's some unique features that you did not know about overload and warp that make them even more useful, is overload can actually be used to, so sabotage in Mass Effect 1 where you can overheat weapons. If you rank it up to 3, you can actually have it overheat weapons, and if you upgrade area overload, you can actually use that as, it's not the best thing because there's other better techniques that you would rather do to crowd control, like pull field or whatever, but it is very useful to overheat weapons if you want to go in, flank them, or go in aggressive for another attack. Pretty great if you're a sentinel, pretty great for anyone who wants to go aggressive. If you're a soldier trying to do hardened adrenaline rush and go in and strike the offensive, then yeah, that's a very useful way to do that. And warp can detonate biotic explosions, so Miranda definitely provides benefits to other biotic squad mates for crowd control, such as Jack and Samara and Morinth, or even Liara in her Shadowbroker DLC. We'll even keep that in mind as well, even though Liara's not in this list. But we'll keep in mind that because the Shadowbroker mission is not easy, but it's definitely tougher than most, in my opinion, when playing it on the hardest difficulty. It's because you have to fight Tali'zorah, a bunch of drones, Shadowbroker, shielded agents who are like blue suns in a way, and yeah, things of that nature. Oh, also vanguards and engineers, which are, it's like Garrus's recruitment mission. It's not the easiest mission to go about it. So yeah, so Miranda has things covered, and warp can be used to initiate biotic detonations. And what are biotic detonations? Pretty much if you have singularity or pull, basically if an enemy is lifted in the air from singularity, pull, or slam, you can use warp, which will do massive amount of damage and will explode anyone in the area. It's a good AoE that damages and finishes off opponents, and it's pretty useful for clustering a group of them together and then finishing them off. It's kind of the final punch that makes biotics, or makes crowd control biotics, really, really useful. Miranda adds a layer to that because of warp. She's one of 2 squad members who can do that aside from Shepard. Yeah, so... And to top it off, Miranda also gets Slam, which... That's her weakest ability, but it is not the most... It is not useless at all. It still can finish off opponents if they have a little bit left. I think the cooldown's 8 or 9 seconds. I'd have to check. Let me see. On the wiki. Let's see. It is... Oh, it's 9 seconds. Okay. That's a little long, but it is still pretty useful. It's one of her most useless moves, but if you need her for some sort of crowd control, that is a move that can help you out a decent bit. If you need it for stunning people, though, I honestly would recommend Warp over that. But yeah, so all of Miranda's abilities are great. And what really tops her off for being the best member, because let's keep this in mind, the next couple of people I will talk about, they have a lot of great strengths with them. But what sets Miranda off for them is she pretty much provides a lot of benefits from the squad by adding health and weapon damage, which is useful for snipers such as Legion, Garrus, Thane, Zaid, and health, which can be more useful for tanky members like Grunt, Jacob, and Legion as well. And I feel like that overall should solidify Miranda as the strongest member. You could debate, like, okay, but Miranda doesn't have a great weapon usage. She just has pistols and submachine guns, and also she is light. She can almost be killed kind of easily. Well, while that may be true, I will tell you, if you get the Tempest and the Carnifex, she will do, well, damage isn't really her strong suit in terms of weapon damage. You ideally would want her for her abilities that she provides and providing weapon damage for other squad mates. If you have her with any squad mate, the squad mate automatically benefits. And the thing that makes Miranda the best is because you bring her in every mission and it's not a bad choice. Like, for instance, an example of a bad choice would be you bring Tali with Collectors, where she literally can only use combat drone. That is pretty much it. She can't AI hack anyone because there's no one to hack. And Energy Drain might work as like kind of just a move to do damage to barrier drain, but she doesn't get any shield replenish. So it's almost like, okay, well, there's plenty of other better options. And while Combat Drone may crowd control Harbinger, it's a 30-second cooldown, unfortunately. Like, I recently did an engineer stream, and, you know, the strategy was use the combat drone, distract Harbinger, take out everyone else, and then, you know, but my combat drone has a 3-second cooldown compared to Tali's, which is 30 seconds. And I find that to be utterly ridiculous. Not that it's useless, no, it is still pretty useful. But regardless, I still think, there are many other better squad mates that can do it. Like, that's what I'm saying. Miranda is never a bad choice, and she benefits and she provides benefits to other squad members who are already strong. And with that, I mean, with that alone, that sets apart from the next person who's in S tier, which I can go off, but let me see what you guys think. You guys have any thoughts? Okay, not at the moment. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people say she's overrated, but in my opinion, every time I've taken Miranda, she's she's been useful everywhere I've had it. It's pretty great for if you're a crowd control class. She can cover all sorts of protected covers. She can activate warp detonators. She can overheat weapons. Heck, you can if you have the ability to set off a warp detonator, you can do that with her slam. Like there's all of her abilities are useful, and one other thing that makes it clear is her build. She is one of 2 characters. Her and Jacob get 31 points to put in their build. Every other character gets 30 points, and you're like, okay, well, why is that 1 extra point important? Well, you can spec into everything. You can pretty much maximize 3 build trees, and then put the 1 point in another. And Miranda, it's optimal to get area overload, probably heavy warp or area warp, depending on your cup of tea. And then maximize her passive build, and then put 1 point in the slam. And that's already useful enough, because I can't tell you squad mates like Grunt where you have to upgrade concussive shot before you get incendiary ammo. It's a huge detriment to like what you're doing to your build, and Miranda doesn't suffer from that at all. Yeah, she is the most useful. If you're unsure of anything, if you're like just getting started with Insanity, I would bring Miranda. Recently in my John Wick streams, I brought Miranda a lot, and you can already tell that she covers a lot. She's incredibly useful. You won't have that much trouble at all if you bring Miranda. Speedrunners even bring Miranda for all her other DPS ranges or DPS functions. Yeah, I think that pretty much solidifies Miranda as number 1. She has really no weakness. She just has mediocre weapon damage and kind of light, but most characters in the game are light. There's really only 3 that are not that light, and even still, I mean, like here's the thing. People say Grunt, if he dies, you're doing something wrong, and while I agree with half of that statement, I do feel like it's a necessity. Well, you have to keep in mind, you have to build Grunt's build first, and you get him at the very beginning, and he's not exactly the most useful. And then when he does become tanky, he can still die, but he rarely does because you can put him in cover. Same goes with, Legion. You get him so late in the game, and Geth's shield boost. Geth's shield boost really makes Legion a tanky character. Anyway, I think that's enough with Miranda. I think I've made my case with why she's the best. Yeah. Next up, we have Kasumi. So you could also, and I wouldn't blame anyone if they said Kasumi's the best either, because honestly, Kasumi has some pretty overpowered abilities. I don't even know where to get started. So if her weakest ability is Overload, that's just shocking to me, because Shadow Strike, because like Overload does double damage to shields, when we put it like that. Like I think, like if we go to Miranda, type in Overload, go down in the description. Let me see. Yeah. It does do damage to synthetic health, barriers, and armor. But it's not nearly double that. And the most you can get from Overload's damage is 200. And then times that by 2, because it's double damage to shields, you get 400. Kasumi's Shadow Strike does either 450 or or 550, I think, if you max it up all the way, and it's pretty crazy. And the fact that you can do, yeah, and I think the max one is like rapid shadow strike, and that, once you do rapid shadow strike, if you kill them, you get like an 80% cooldown reduction? I think it's something like that, and it's pretty crazy because it's a great finisher for many people. Now, unfortunately, that move is buggy even on the Legendary Edition, so do keep that in mind. And Kasumi can't reach the places that are further away from Shepherd. So what I mean by that is if your Shepherd can't get there, like let's say you're on a ledge and the enemy's on the opposite side and they have heavies there, and you want Kasumi to shadow strike, Kasumi can't get there because Shepherd can't get there. So Kasumi can only shadow strike an area Shepherd can go. And that kind of sucks, but it's still, Shadow Strike is still useful. Trust me, it can distract enemies. It does so much damage. Rapid Shadow Strike has a massive cooldown reduction. It's pretty powerful. You can use that instead of like Overload and other sort of things. And this also makes up for Kasumi being light. That once she's has really low health, you can Shadow Strike, and that's another way for her to get her shields back. Shadow Strike is a really powerful move, and it's probably one of the best moves in the whole game. She does have Overload. I kind of specified it with Miranda earlier what its functions are. And then Kasumi's passive really is, I think, health, weapon damage, and cooldown reduction. Ideally, you'd want maximum cooldown reduction so that you can keep using her two most powerful abilities, Flashbang Grenade and Shadow Strike. And then going into Flashbang Grenade, which is her loyalty point, you get it early in the game. Well, really, it depends on whenever you do her mission. And Flashbang Grenade is really, really useful against Vanguard's Harbinger engineers, because it disables their abilities. And trust me, the pesky, annoying engineers are, it's sabotage and dampening combined from Mass Effect 1. And, you get rid of those pesky engineers that send combat drones and flutter you out of cover. But, Kasumi, that move, it just kind of, it's OP because you can just immediately charge in and just kill them, or, there won't be nearly as many enemies attacking you just because of that. And it has a really low cooldown. I think it's 6 seconds. And from that, I really think, Kasumi is super powerful when it comes to that. She's a good choice for literally every mission. Her only really weakness is like Miranda, where she only uses pistols, heavy pistols, and submachine guns. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So you guys are probably asking, so why do you rank Miranda over Kasumi? And the reason I do that is because Miranda provides more benefits to the squad that make them even stronger. Whereas Kasumi can get buggy at times. In theory, Kasumi should be tied with Miranda, in my opinion, but I think with the nature of the game, Shadow Strike gets pretty buggy at times, and it might place Kasumi in a bad position. You can't use her abilities. Shadow Strike is also not nearly as versatile as a couple other DPS options. And Kasumi only gets 30 points, and it's hard to spec what you'd want in Kasumi. Sometimes I want everything but Overload, but sometimes you're Overload kind of need that too. But it's pretty tough to see what you can spec into Kasumi. It is probably because a lot of things are OP, but trust me, I mean, Kasumi, you know, has a lot of great strengths, and that's why she's an S tier. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you know, she's not providing benefits to the squad. Shadow Strike does have everything covered technically, but like I said, the move can be buggy. And also, I think, well, let me see Shadow Strike's cooldown. Shadow Strike's cooldown, unless you kill someone, is 9 seconds, which is that the same as Overload and Warp? Oh, it's 12 seconds. Oh, wow. It's actually not nearly as much. Well, regardless, though, I still think Kasumi is up there, but not quite up there. From my experience using her, she's great with Flashbang Grenade clustering everyone in the group together. And I think when people are clustered in groups, she has great crowd control in that regard. It's weird, crowd control for a tech operative. but aside from that, ultimately you can't guarantee Kasumi to do weapon damage. And I realized in her mission, like her loyalty mission, because at the end of the day, you want Shepard to be like, you know, have the highest weapon damage and have the littlest things. And Miranda's squad member buff also benefits Shepard. And that's ideally what you want at the end of the day, is because you're going to be doing most of the carnage, most of the damage. Unfortunately, your squad members don't have many abilities. So it's up to your Shepard to do a lot, aside from them killing enemies and them crowd controlling and other sort of things. And Kasumi feels independent. And Miranda feels like she's there to be a leader and supply everyone with possible powers. And I know I'm probably overhyping that a lot, but I still think Kasumi doesn't benefit other squad members. She's more independent, and I feel like that's not the worst thing. Obviously, she's still S tier, but you know, what does it do for your Shepard other than Shadow Strike, distracting enemies, and Flashbang Grenade, overheating and neglecting enemies to use attack and biotic options? I mean, trust me, if you are fighting higher level enemies like Harbinger, she is more useful than Miranda. But at the end of the day, I do feel like Miranda, in general, provides a lot more benefits to just regular enemies. Because you will die by engineers, pyros, and all that, but I feel like most of the time I actually die by just regular enemies, because they're just attacking. And Miranda providing more health and weapon damage, it's greater. It's good to just, you know, to attack and pester them. But yeah, meanwhile, Flashbang Grenade, wow, you could make an argument saying Flashbang Grenade could, you know, stop enemies from attacking you. Yeah, that's true. But ultimately, sorry, lost train of thought. ultimately, Flashbang Grenade is incredibly powerful, but I don't think it's the most useful since it doesn't do any damage, and at the end of the day, you're trying to kill the enemies the fastest. Do you guys have anything to say about that, or no? Okay. All right, moving on. Here, I'll make this kind of quicker. Next up, we got Zaid. Zaid has a lot that's going for him. He has the highest weapon damage aside from Thane and Legion. Legion gets the Widow, and Zaid Zaid has, his passive, you can get up to 50% weapon damage, and he has disruptor ammo, which is incredibly useful against Geth missions, Blue Suns, which you will fight shielded enemies most of the game, and other sort of things of that nature. Disruptor ammo also sabotages, but by the time that really applies into effect, it's not that useful, personally. So really, it's just take it for the shield damage and synthetic stun. But it is useful to have it as squad, because heavy, it's 60%, that's good, but your ultimate goal is to get the shields down. 90% of the times I get the shields down if you equip a sniper. He does have the best weapon layout. The assault rifles and snipers, in my opinion, is the best weapon layout in the game. Let's see. Concussive Shot is his worst ability. It is good for stunning. However, it's a good get off me option. However, I do think, compared to the others, it is the worst ability in the game. However, it can be a lifesaver at times. Not the worst ability in the game, sorry. The worst ability for Zaid. However, it can also be a lifesaver just because, you get in a tight situation, you throw that, stuns the enemy, you get an extra second to breathe and plan a course of action. Inferno Grenade is incredibly useful against organic enemies, that's where you fight most of the game. It makes them panic. It does incredible damage against them, double damage with armor and health. Great against Forge that regenerating Krogan. Unfortunately, that is his loyalty point, and Zaid's Concussive Shot has to be upgraded first before you do Disruptor ammo, and because of that build disparity, he's lower in A tier. And also Zaid is very light. I think he gets 15% health, which is actually worse compared to the others. So it's hard to spec things into Zaid's build because of that. I think that's really his only core weakness. Everything else about him is pretty solid. Pretty much it. He's not on the tier of Miranda and Kasumi because they barely have any weaknesses. Zaid has a pretty weak build variety. Well, not build variety, but build structure, which really separates him off. Which really kills him from being S tier. Otherwise, he would be up there. And also, he can die super light, kind of like Thane. So both of them are kind of skilled assassins. All right. Anyway, next what we have on our list is Thane. Thane has Zaid's weapon damage. Both of them. Oh yeah, by the way, Zaid and Thane cannot use the Widow, so it's best for them to use the Mantis to do high weapon damage. And the reason why you use the Mantis over the Viper is because the Viper, they have to shoot a bunch of consecutive shots, and it lets them be out of cover more. They take more damage. They're more likely to die. Whereas the Mantis, they shoot one shot, they're back in cover, and you do that over and over. Thane is great because he has warp, which is used as a warp detonator, and he's one of 2 squad members to do that. And warp is very versatile against collectors, clips, frankly anyone. Great pairing with Samara and Jack and Morinth. I've already specified why warp is incredibly good, but yeah, Thane has that. Thane also has throw, which is a get off me option. I can't remember how many cooldown seconds it is. I think it's 7 or 8 or 9. I'm not sure. It's weaker compared to pull in my opinion, but it can launch enemies off ledges. It's situational in that regard. It is one of Thane's weaker options, but it's still pretty strong. Thane's weapon damage is really what makes him incredibly strong. He gets a sniper and submachine gun, which is, it's not the best build, but it's still pretty good. And considering that, Thane has a strong DPS role, it's probably one of the strongest in the game. It's what makes him this good up here. Shredder ammo is his most useless ability. If you can, do the Shadowbroker DLC and do not put any points in it. I mean, I think Shredder ammo can... Just on this difficulty, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, I might do a build where I put stuff in Thane Shredder ammo to see if it changes my mind, but everyone has said it's pretty useless. It's not the greatest ability ever, or weapon ammo. It's probably the worst ammo attachment. Really, and what this means is when you get Thane, you can immediately spec into his best build options, which is like warp and his passive. And then you could probably get heavy, or not heavy throw field, which will, stagger a bunch of enemies back and crowd control them if necessary. Yeah, it's all... He's got some pretty great strengths that set him apart, but he's also got a couple weaknesses that, that does make him a bit weaker. But despite this, I do think Thane is ideal for any type of DPS role. He is incredibly OP. Okay, next up we got Garrus. Garrus has concussive shot, overload, AP ammo, and then his passive. So his passive actually allows Garrus to do the highest power damage. So overload, if you get heavy overload, he gets plus 25%, and that would be, let's see, 25% to 200. That's 250. Yeah, that can get that little sliver left, and if you double it, against shields, 500. So great way to spec his powers available. Concussive shot, the damage really doesn't matter all that much in my opinion. But yeah, and also this power damage also applies to AP ammo. So I think an additional 20 or 25%. I can't remember. I think it's 25%. An additional 25% will make Garrus pretty powerful with his AP ammo. But with all this being said, though, here's the bad news about Garrus, because he would be higher than Thane if his build was not spec'd in an awful manner. You have to unlock overload by putting 2 points in concussive shot, which sucks because if it was up to me, I would do overload AP ammo. And his passive, and he would be pretty strong. But unfortunately, you have to upgrade his concussive shot to get overload, which is one of Garrus' signature abilities. Now, you could choose Garrus not to have overload, which I'm not sure if I'm a big fan of that, because the power damage is, vital to Garrus. I mean, unless you want Garrus to purely be a sniper and play that soldier role, which actually could work too. I mean, you see. Yeah, he could probably decimate Vorcha and any enemy with health, but The thing is, if AP ammo was more than just health and armor, then it would be more useful for you to not put anything into overload. But you fight mostly shielded enemies. That is a vital tool for Garrus, so I would advise speccing into overload. Garrus also dies kind of easily. He is pretty light, although not one of the lightest characters. I'd say he's like a mid-weight in terms of, like, you know, how fast he goes about. So it's almost kind of a buff relatively to Mass Effect 1, where he was light in comparison to everyone else that had a good shield option like immunity or barrier. And yeah. AP ammo is pretty great. I think it can go up, if you upgrade it to tungsten ammo, it goes up to 70%, I believe. Let me see. It is his loyalty point, and you have to get it later throughout the game, but let's see. Yeah, tungsten. You can also get squad AP, so if you're an infiltrator, that's also probably especially useful to you, or a soldier, or any of the things. Well, no, if you have incendiary ammo, it's probably better to use that. But if you want tungsten ammo and Garrus to really snipe out everyone, yeah, that's pretty good, with all that considered. I think if you do, now let me see. If I go into player notes, oh, never mind, there's nothing in there. Now, I don't know if the 25% power damage adds up. So let's say his base, I don't know what his base damage is. I guess you do 70% and then another 25%. It's kind of crazy. I'm not sure if that equates to 95%. Yeah, see, you have to unlock overload a concussive shot there at level 2. Yeah, Garrus has the best weapon layout. I think the only thing really weak is really his builds and how he's a midweight. Let me see. I believe that's it. Yeah, this is where build layouts kind of can kill characters sometimes, but otherwise, Garrus is really strong in this game and has been buffed. As much as everyone has been nerfed with the lack of abilities, I think Garrus has personally been buffed in a lot of ways. Let's see. Okay. All right. Next up, we have A- tier, the final sniper, which is Thane or Legion, not Thane. Legion is incredibly tanky. You can get his 2 upgrades of his shield getting buffed by a massive amount, and you can also upgrade Geth's shield boost and get him to have a shield of like 800 or near 1,000. It is insane. He is very tanky, rarely dies because he's in a sniper position most of the time, so he's less likely to die than Grun, who's more aggressive and upfront. Unless you put Grun back in the position where like Legion would be. So it's almost incredible how tanky Legion is in retrospect. Legion has combat drone. A lot of people hate combat drone, but I personally think I used to hate it too, but I've actually seen the use of it with the engineer stream and with other sort of ways, or with the engineer class. Combat drone's a great distraction, great for distracting higher level enemies. It stutters them at times. It's pretty great. If you only rely on that though, and you don't do anything about it, you can't expect it to do everything for you. But it is a great tool to use against anyone, because it's one of the few abilities that you can use and it doesn't, have to apply to shields or armor or barriers or anything. And it can even do damage if you upgrade it to attack drone. Now, I've rarely been able to do this, but I think it's able to crowd control husks, gather a group of them, and have them all attack the drone. But I've rarely been able to do that. It's actually kind of hard to set that up, but if you can do that, that is very, very useful on the Derelict Reaper mission. Now, obviously, that's Legion's recruiting mission, so you can't use it there. But like say, if you bring Tali there, that's a great ability. So yeah, his guest shield boost is pretty incredible, which can also add weapon damage at the end. And he has AI hacking, which is unfortunately not the best ability in this game. In my opinion, AI hacking is the worst ability, just because there's not many AI in the game. And also, it's pretty situational. You can upgrade it to get area hacking, but I wouldn't really advise it because you don't fight many AI in the game. And you fight maybe the simple max. I think Overload is probably the best place where you'd use it, or I guess Legion or Tali's loyalty missions and Tali's recruitment mission, but regardless, I still think it's not really too useful, and it's a distraction, but it's not that big. Now, I do want to do something interesting and try area hacking. I just want to see how that is. But yeah. Anyway, for Tali, or no, not for Tali, sorry. I was getting ahead of myself. She is not next, though, I will tell you that. For Legion, he gets the Widow. He is the only squad member that gets the Widow, which makes his weapon damage insane. Combine it with weapon ammo attachment like Disruptor, Incendiary, Warp, AP, any of that, and he is a monster. He annihilates people. He makes Harbinger looks like a simple enemy. Like theoretically, Legion should be S tier at end the game, just because of how easy he makes the game seem by just annihilating everyone. He is so powerful. If you guys are struggling with later missions, just bring him and unlock the Widow, and he's gonna be OP. I'm telling you. But why is he not there? You get him so dang late in the game. That is mostly the reason why Legion is not S tier, and that's really his only weakness. Because the only other thing I can say is he doesn't really. Yeah, I don't know. He just relies on an ammo attachment, and that's great. He's one of the best DPS roles in the game. It's just you just get him so late. I'd have to put him here just because of that. Because you really only use him for only a couple minute missions. Now you can't say, all right, well maybe save all the DLC for later, but you can't do that. But regardless, most of the game you won't be using Legion, and that's just unfortunate. Next up, we have in B tier. Let's see my list. All right, a lot of people are going to judge me for this. I wonder if anyone's here actually looking. But I actually strongly believe it's Jack. Some people are like, what? How Jack? Of all the people we have listed below. And I'm telling you guys, Shockwave is not that bad of an ability. It is situational, I will admit, and people think it should only be used against husks, but it actually is kind of powerful. It is great in situational, in placements where enemies are top on ledges, and you can hit them out of there. Say you get their shields down, you can even hit them out of cover, because it like stuns them for a duration. So if you have a sniper, you hit them out of cover, then it's like a great way to like do damage to them. It is great for getting enemies out of cover. If you're less skilled like me, who can angle their warps, or not warps, well, their poles exactly. That is a great ability to get enemies out of cover. You can use any DPS range to, to attack them, and then maybe you can finally crowd control them ultimately as a last result. It's pretty dang good. It's very useful for soldiers, very useful for infiltrators. Yeah. Pull, it's ideal to get pull field. And pull is pretty useful because that is probably the best crowd control method, because you grab all of them that are in a certain radius and they all come forward. If you use a warp explosion, it sends them all flying everywhere. It's pretty great. And Jack also has warp ammo that does more damage to pulled enemies. And if you do squad warp ammo, you can do a lot more damage, especially if your character's a DPS role, and other characters in the game, frankly. And speaking of that, warp ammo being her loyalty point, I still feel like, heck, it's almost ideal for, that is Jack's best ability, and it's pretty strong. Great against collectors, great against Eclipse, great against crowd controlling anyone. It's frankly, it's a pretty dang good weapon to do it. Because, and here's the thing, is like when you pull someone and you use warp ammo and you're attacking them, you do double the damage. And that's quick for just getting them out safely. And some of you might argue, okay, well, the shields and everything are the bulk of it. Not really. There's, I will admit, taking down enemy shields and all that is pretty tough. But when you have pull field, take a group of them together and you pinpoint and nail down each one, that's actually pretty strong in my opinion. I know it doesn't, because many people, when they think about it, they're like, all right, you need overload, you need warp, you need things to take out protections, and because biotics suck in this game, blah, blah, blah. Well, in my opinion, biotics are still really, really strong. They're not as OP as Mass Effect 1, but they're still incredibly useful. I know a lot of people struggle with using Jack, but I think when you use Jack in this regard, you get a lot of great results, in my opinion. Let me see. Oh, Jack's weapon layout is actually not bad either. She gets a shotgun, and if you equip her with a Geth plasma shotgun, she can kill pretty dang easily. And she annihilates people who are pulled with warp ammo, and she does pretty good damage. I think if you didn't have any DLC, things would be nerfed a bit, but since Legendary Edition is out, all of you guys can use DLC weapons. Geth Plasma Shotgun pretty much makes her a very strong character for doing weapon damage. I think you want to use that more than anything else. You don't ever want to switch to a heavy pistol. So her weapon layout, her weapon layout is pretty good, actually. And yeah, personally, I think she's there, and even compared to the rest of these characters, I strongly do believe Jack is a solid B tier and represents the, I guess, the midpoint of the tier list. Moving on, let's do Samara is next. Now, Reeve is pretty incredible. And you're like, why isn't Samara above Jack if Reeve is such a good ability? It is good. It is pretty much a warp, but it is not as strong as doing a biotic detonator, in my opinion. However, it does give Samara health if you do use it on the health of enemies, but ideally it is It's in my opinion less useful than Warp. I thought it was more useful, but it doesn't have as much versatility. But yeah, but Samara does get health if you do choose to reave them with their health, with unprotected. Otherwise, it does double damage to armor and barriers, which is pretty good. Doesn't have much chemistry with other biotic abilities. Samara has pull and throw. Both are redundant. Well, it's redundant to have both because ideally it's just better for you to have one. Throw is very situational, and pull. If you weren't going to use, if cooldowns were individualized, like meaning, each power has a cooldown versus the whole, everything has a cooldown when you use power, then Samara would be probably stronger, and it would make pull and throw less redundant together, but they are. And ideally, you just would want pull and reave and probably do a passive skill to reduce cooldowns. Just because throw is super situational, and it's frankly not really worth the investment all too much, in my opinion. I think you do have to upgrade throw though before pull. Is that true? Let me see. Which kind of unfortunately makes your build spec a little off. Let me see. Yeah, you have to upgrade throw first, which is fine. The issue is with Reeve is Samara is kind of useless until, well, not useless, but she doesn't get that strong power until you get her loyalty mission, which unfortunately is very late in the game, so kind of falls under Legion's case, and versus Jack, where you get warp ammo kind of almost immediately, and level save, and spec the points up there. It's this is why Samara is behind the rest of the crowd. I mean, all these characters are incredibly strong, but in my opinion, Samara is still strong, and her weapon layout is also redundant. You have submachine guns and assault rifles. You ideally just want to equip the Matic on Samara and have her just do strong, decent damage there. Yeah. Aside from that, Samara suffers from redundancy, kind of. She is a little tanky with Reeve, but unfortunately she also suffers from, getting her more useful abilities later on in the game. I think that's why she's a late B tier. Alright, we will continue this tier list another time, guys. We'll do the rest of these characters later. Pretty hungry right now. So let me know how it is. If you agree, disagree, we'll do the other characters later. And yeah, thank you for watching this, and I'll see you guys next time.